Have you ever just looked at an image and know that what you're seeing is historical, almost legendary? A picture so iconic that it transcends players, clubs, and even rivalries. The kind that just makes you want to stop and admire. One example would be the photo immortalizing Andres Iniesta the moment where he played his last game. After everyone had left the Camp Nou, only he remained at the center of one of the greatest stadiums in football. Or who hasn't seen the picture of Mourinho cupping his ear, telling the crowd that he couldn't hear them after beating Juventus in their own backyard with Manchester United in the Champions League? Among all these, one picture seems to go above the rest. You may have never seen it. I doubt that. But if you are among the people that have never actually seen this photo, allow me to remedy and tell its tale. So here we can see Marco Materazzi and Rui Costa as they look on to the fans throwing smoke screens. An image of two men taking a break during a football match to look at the whole situation unfolding around them. This photo was taken by Italian photographer Stefano Rilandini, who at the time was working for the news agency known as Reuters, during the Champions League quarterfinals between eternal rivals Inter and Milan in the 2005 season. He would later go on to say in an interview that this specific picture reminded him why football is the most beautiful game in the world, and we can certainly see why. Milan were the reigning champions of Italy, having won the Scudetto the year before. Inter, however, did not finish far behind, managing a third place and adding a Coppa Italia to that. The following year, there would be a shock result, with Juventus stripped of their Scudetto amid the Calciopoli scandal. The title of champions of Italy would be handed to Inter. The two managers were natural-born winners. Roberto Mancini would be the person on the bench for Inter, while Carlo Ancelotti, or Don Carlo as some people like to call him, would be leading the line for Milan. The two captains, well, what can I say? Probably one of the most illustrious matchups. Honestly, doesn't really get better than this in terms of sheer leadership. Paolo Maldini for AC Milan and Javier Zanetti for Inter Milan. Shouldn't need any introduction. If we're talking about charisma and proper passion for their clubs, this is where it is at its peak. As I mentioned earlier, this final happened amid the investigations for Calciopoli, one of the biggest scandals in football ever, resulting at the end of Juventus being stripped of 2 titles and sent directly to Serie B, with several teams docked points. One of the lineups to come up as guilty would end up being Milan, as they faced a very heavy points deduction, 30 being the points taken from the Rossoneri, one of the harshest penalties, second probably only to Juve. Milan were entering the second leg of the quarterfinals, having amassed a comfortable 2-0 win in the first match, where they played at home, with Jaap Stam and Andriy Shevchenko featuring on the scoreboard, forcing Inter to chase after them, needing to score at least 2 goals to be able to level the playing field. They both played home and away in the same stadium, so the advantage of where they were playing was almost nullified. Inter, being the home team in this case, the advantage would be having a bigger chunk of fans supporting them, because they both have the privilege to call San Siro, La Scala del Calcio, as known in Italy, their home. The first half would start off in a very harsh fashion, as the Inter fans would lament that the referee missed a headbutt by Shevchenko towards Materazzi. Doesn't that sound familiar? But as fate would want it, Sheva would be the one to punish them, in the 30th minute, slotting home to give the away side an additional 1-goal advantage. Inter now had to score 4 to pass around, 3 to draw. The teams would go into the tunnel after 45 minutes with a 0-1 score to Milan. To make matters worse for the home side, in the 73rd minute, Cambiaso was seen disallow a goal after referee Marcus Merck claimed to have seen a foul during build-up play. As it seemed, Julio Cruz, Inter striker, had fouled Dida, Milan's goalkeeper. This was enough for the Nerazzurri fans to begin throwing all sorts of things onto the field, and before long, flares were being lit, making this seem less like a football match and more like a fiery showdown between fan bases. The theater of what would then become one of the most iconic photographs in modern football. A few seconds and Relandini was going to give the world something that would go down as iconic. But he didn't know it yet, as photographers were scrambling to get some shots of the players. Suddenly, something happened. A small moment. To some, it may even have looked insignificant. Marco Materazzi, Inter's defender, put his elbow onto the shoulder of Rui Costa, Milan's number 10, as they both looked on to what was happening right in front of them. This small scene lasted a couple of seconds maybe, before both realizing who the other player was. But alas, it was too late. The moment had already become immortal. And the author, Stefano Rolandini, with his trusty camera, took a few quick pictures and got to work sending it to people. The match, as they say using a Formula 1 reference, would be red flagged. The referee calling it off due to the sheer amount of things raining down on the field, but also the smoke screens impeding vision. The players retreated into the tunnel. A small attempt was made to continue the match, but amid all the chaos that ensued, Dida had to be subbed off due to a firecracker being launched near him, and consequently getting a first-degree burn to his shoulder. The second keeper, Cristina Abbiati, replaced him, but to no avail, as after a few minutes the match was called off completely. Milan were given the win, as the Inter fans were the perpetrators and the Nerazzurri were out of the Champions League. The following days, public opinion in Italy heavily condemned the behavior of the fans, and Inter were handed a monetary penalty with an additional ban on 4 European matches with no spectators. Milan would go on to win their semi-final against PSV, playing the final against Liverpool, which we all know how that went. One of the biggest upsets in the history of Champions League, but that is a story for another day.